fun එක next level කරන dialogue fan blaster.
Tonight, on First at 9 this Tuesday the 17th of December 2024. Business friendly. Sri Lankan President assures business friendly environment for Indian entrepreneurs. Invites investment to a number of sectors including the digital economy. New Speaker. Dr. Jagat Vikramaratne unanimously elected as the new Speaker of Parliament.
Honorable Idampitiya Gedara Vanigasuriya Mudiyanselage Jagat Vikramaratne, Member of Parliament, for the office of Speaker of the 10th Parliament.
Bond exchange. Sri Lanka to complete international sovereign debt restructuring soon. First of its kind governance-linked bonds to be issued to replace defaulted securities.
A proposal to add a state contingent instrument to the 169,000 treasury bond already exchanged between the government of Sri Lanka and the Employees Provident Fund.
Security reassessment. No Triforces personnel on former president's security details from next week. Police protection in line with a semi-annual threat assessment.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama, Kiren Perata. Obe Vishwasi Dino Sensodyne, then Langamati Pharmacy in Labagata Hacker.
Kanta Parisang Karagatot? Ape Parisang.
Asian Paints Causeway Aquasafe, Vesat Matui Gadarat Disney.
This is Derana First at 9. Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a very warm welcome. You're joining us tonight on First at 9, your primetime English news service. We take you to your top stories making headlines tonight. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake today concluded his state visit to India, his first overseas visit since assuming office. President Dissanayake met with leading Indian entrepreneurs in New Delhi and invited them to invest in Sri Lanka, assuring them of the nation's business-friendly environment. The Indian business leaders have expressed willingness to invest in Sri Lanka's tourism, information technology and renewable energy sectors, with the Sri Lankan delegation pledging to facilitate such investments.
President Anura Dissanayake participated in a business forum in New Delhi last evening, which was organised by the Confederation of Indian Industry and saw the participation of some of India's most prominent entrepreneurs. The President's office said discussions focused on key areas such as the digital economy, tourism, renewable energy and information technology, as well as expanding investment opportunities in Sri Lanka by leveraging trade between the two countries. It added that the Indian business leaders expressed their willingness to invest in Sri Lanka, while the Sri Lankan government pledged to provide necessary investment facilitation. The Sri Lankan president, posting on X, said he highlighted Sri Lanka's investor-friendly environment and invited Indian business leaders to explore opportunities in key sectors such as tourism, information technology and renewable energy. Meanwhile, India's Minister of Commerce and Industry, Piyush Goyal, who was also present at the meeting, posted on X that he reaffirmed India's commitment to strengthening bilateral relations with Sri Lanka through enhanced economic and cultural exchanges for shared prosperity. Meanwhile, earlier yesterday, President Dissanayake met with Indian President Draupadi Murmu at the Rashtrapati Bhavan in New Delhi.
Sri Lanka is deeply embedded in the psyche of the Indian people and is an integral part of our folklore and common civilizational heritage. We will continue to build together on these deep and enduring links of history and culture and towards the shared prosperity of the people of our two countries.
Our two nations have important roles to play in ensuring the stability, security and sustainable growth of the Indian Ocean region. Sri Lanka is committed to broadening cooperation with India in order to create opportunities for future generations. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Indian government and people for the continued support and friendship extended to Sri Lanka.
Following the discussion, Indian President Draupadi Murmu hosted a dinner reception in honour of the Sri Lankan President. President Derana also met with Indian Health Minister and President of the Bharatiya Janata Party, Jagat Prakash Nadda. Meanwhile, today, the final day of his visit, President Derana visited both Gaya and invoked blessings. Subsequently, the President concluded his state visit to India, the first since assuming office, and is expected to arrive at the Bandaranaike International Airport later today.
Union Assurance.
Welcome to Cinnamon Life, South Asia's biggest entertainment hub, where awe awaits.
TV supiri deal.
Sadaharita Plantations Limited, celebrating 22 years of your trust.
Aspirations Education, a pioneer in overseas education. Meet our experts at top destinations worldwide. Your trusted and caring partner in overseas education.
Now, a new speaker was elected to Parliament today. National People's Power member and Polonnaruwa District MP Dr. Jagat Vikramaratne was unanimously elected as the new Speaker of the 10th Parliament. Meanwhile, 4 new National List MPs from the New Democratic Front and the main opposition Samagi Janasandhana were sworn in.
Speaker of the 10th Parliament Ashoka Ranwala resigned from his position on Saturday following a week-long controversy over his educational qualifications. With his resignation, the parliamentary speaker's position became vacant. Consequently, today's parliamentary session was presided over by Deputy Speaker Dr. Muhammad Rizvi Sali. At the beginning of today's session, 4 new members of parliament were sworn in for nationalist seats of the opposition. Faisal Mustafa was sworn in from the New Democratic Front. Sujiva Senasinghe, Muhammad Ismail Muthu Muhammad and Mano Ganesan were sworn in from the Samagi Janasandhana. Then a new speaker was appointed to Parliament.
Honourable Idampitiya Gedara Vanigasuriya Mudiyanselage Jagat Vikramaratne, Member of Parliament, for the office of Speaker of the 10th Parliament.
Accordingly, National People's Power member and Polonnaruwa District MP Dr. Jagat Vikramaratne was appointed as the new Speaker of Parliament.
I congratulate you on your appointment as the Speaker of the 10th Parliament. We believe you are highly qualified for this position. This Parliament has set an example of being accountable to the public, and we trust you will continue to uphold that standard.
ආදර්ශය මත ඔබ වැඩ කරන බව අපිට ලොකු විශ්වාසයක් තියෙනවා.
අපිට සිද්ධ වුණා හිටපු කතානායකවරයාට විරුද්ධව විශ්වාස භංගයකට මුල පුරන්නට.
We had to bring a no confidence motion against the former speaker. I hope we will not need to repeat that. Our goal is to build a country with a strong legislature, executive and judiciary that protects democracy. Best wishes to you.
අපේ අභිලාෂය අපේ ඒකායන අරමුණ. ඔබතුමාට සුබ පැතුම්.
කතානායකතුමනි ඔබතුමාට සුබ පතනවා මං හිතනවා.
We wish you all the best. This is a great responsibility. If the controversies of the recent times have caused damage to the Parliament, we trust you will work to restore the strength and its dignity. We extend our wishes from the SLPP.
I would like to congratulate you, and I'm so proud that from my profession, one of the colleague has become the Honourable Speaker. So I wish you all the very best.
While congratulating the new speaker, I would like to make a proposal. In light of the events that led to this situation, I suggest removing honorary titles such as doctor and professor when conducting parliamentary proceedings. These titles may be more appropriate in academic or professional settings for doctors in hospitals and professors in universities. Simplifying this practice would align better with the working class principles of politics because it is a weight for societal divisions. Therefore, I propose you to exclude honorary titles during parliamentary proceedings.
අපි මේ සභාව තුළ එකිනෙකාට ආමන්ත්‍රණය කිරීම ඉස්සරහින් තියෙන කැලි ටික අයින් කරගත්තා නම් හොඳයි කියලා.
කරු මන්ත්‍රීවරුනි කරු මන්ත්‍රීවරියනි අද දින මා මේ උත්තරීතර පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ
Honourable members of Parliament, I extend my heartfelt gratitude for entrusting me with this position. As the Speaker of this Parliament, I pledge to safeguard your rights and privileges throughout my tenure. I look forward to serving with integrity and ensuring the dignity of this House.
මාගේ උපරිම ශක්ති ප්‍රමාණයෙන් කටයුතු කරන බවට පොරොන්දු වෙනවා.
Sri Lanka will issue GDP-linked bonds of $10.4 billion US dollars, including first of its kind governance-linked bonds of $1.4 billion as well as rupee bonds of $1.55 billion on Friday, the 20th of this month. The new instruments will replace the $12.55 billion US dollars worth of international sovereign bonds that were outstanding as at the 25th of November this year. With the issuance of the new instruments, Sri Lanka is set to successfully complete the international sovereign bond restructuring process, which observers have said is one of the most complex in recent history.
In a filing with the Singapore Stock Exchange, Sri Lanka announced the instruments that are to be issued as part of the restructure of $12.55 billion US dollars worth of defaulted international sovereign bonds. Sri Lanka has received consent from holders representing 97.86% of the outstanding principal on the existing bonds for the proposed restructuring program. However, the bonds that matured in July 2022, in which Hamilton Reserve, a holdout investor, claims a 25% stake, has only received 73% acceptance. Hamilton Reserve has filed a suit in a New York court insisting on full payment, but the proceedings have been stayed until the exchange is completed. However, as the minimum participation condition has been met, Sri Lanka will issue GDP-linked bonds of $10.4 billion US dollars, including governance-linked bonds of $1.4 billion and rupee bonds of $155 billion in place of the securities that were outstanding as at the 25th of November this year. The governance-linked bond is the first of its kind and is designed to reward Sri Lanka for transparency and effective economic management as measured by two key performance indicators. The first demands that Sri Lanka exceed a baseline ratio set by the International Monetary Fund for total revenue to GDP in both 2026 and 2027, which the IMF has projected at 15.3% and 15.4% respectively. The second target requires the Finance Ministry to prepare and publish a fiscal strategy statement on its website in both 2026 and 2027. If Sri Lanka meets both targets, interest payments would be reduced by $80 million US dollars over the remaining life of the instrument, which matures in 2035. Meanwhile, the macro-linked bond, the other major GDP-linked instrument, includes a provision to adjust payouts to the upside in case of better-than-expected growth or to the downside if the economy falls short of forecasts. Rothschild & Company has calculated that the downside scenario, if triggered, would provide $2.1 billion in additional debt relief. This is the first time in recent history that a bond includes a provision to adjust payouts not only to the upside but also the downside. The new instruments are set to be issued on the 20th of December, which will mark the successful conclusion of Sri Lanka's international sovereign debt restructuring, which observers say comprises one of the most complex sets of instruments ever arranged in a restructuring of its kind. With the finalizing of the bond exchange, Sri Lanka will become the fourth country to conclude a restructuring of its bonds this year, following in the footsteps of Ghana, Ukraine and Zambia.
Fast track your career from O-levels with eSoft.
ඩයිබටසෝල් සීනිවලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
ප්‍රයිම් ගෲප් ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථම වතාවට හඳුන්වා දෙන ලෑන්ඩ් ලීසින් ලේසියෙන් මීටමක්.
Single 1111 up to 60% off from the 11th November to the 17th of November.
Kalani wire කිසිගින්නක් නෑ.
කිසිගින්නක් නෑ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Apiko Mattress. Meals of समय සැපට නිදියන්න Apiko Springs are foam mattress මාදිලි රසකින්.
Now, during today's parliamentary session, opposition MP Dr. Harsha De Silva of the SJB stated that the government must establish a state contingency instrument for treasury bonds exchanged with the Employees Provident Fund. The instrument would provide relief similar to the proposal given to ISB holders, especially if GDP growth exceeds the expected level by year 2028. Meanwhile, the Deputy Minister of Finance and Planning, Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma, mentioned that investor confidence has increased following initiatives taken by the new government. He also noted that the majority of ISB holders have accepted the government's proposed plan.
ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදල සමග ශ්‍රී ලංකා රජය ඇති කරගත් ප්‍රධාන එකඟතාවයක් වන්නේ ණය ප්‍රශස්තකරණයයි.
One of the key agreements with the IMF was debt optimization. Accordingly, the restructuring of the international sovereign bonds is the next step, which has already been completed. However, at no point were the opposition's proposals were taken into consideration. The newly elected government promised to propose amendments to these agreements. I would like to ask what amendments have been made, or does the public have the right to know if you are simply continuing the program of the previous government? These macro-linked bonds have no connection to local debt restructuring. The damage done to the EPF remains unaddressed. This series of agreements is extremely disadvantageous to the country. Through these macro-linked bonds, ISB holders gain an advantage as Sri Lanka's economy grows. The percentage of the haircut they take is reduced. However, no such advantage is provided to EPF holders.
Domestic debt restructuring වලින් දේශීය ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගතකරණය කිරීම තුළින් වැඩ කරන ජනතාවගේ ඉතිරි කිරීම වලට ඒ සිදුණු හානියට එයාට කිසිම වාසියක් ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ.
ජනාධිපතිවරණයට කල්ැතුවම අවුරුද්දකට වඩා වැඩි කාලයක් තුල IMF එකත් ඒ සාකච්ඡාවන් පැවැත්වුණා.
Even before the presidential elections, through discussions with the IMF and bondholder agents, we had a realistic picture of the situation and how to proceed. There are many complex aspects to debt restructuring. The previous government took steps to sign an MOU with ISB holders. We had a well-structured plan to ensure better advantages for the country. Some may ask, if it was an MOU, why can't we renegotiate? If we did so, it would violate the comparability of treatment promised to our creditors. After issuing the documents for ISB restructuring, we learned that 98% of foreign investors now have greater confidence in the proceedings of the new government. We initially thought that the process would take until the end of December, but according to the latest information, the majority of creditors have already accepted our proposals. There is also another significant achievement. Just before the presidential election, we learned that investor interest in governance-linked bonds valued at $1.5 billion was decreasing. However, after efforts by this government, both governance-linked bond proposals have now been accepted.
The confidence that we have instilled among the investors out there, not only locally, out of the 11 series of bonds, 10 series of bonds, I am being informed, have accepted 100% as of now. It is one of them due to legal challenges that is pending. This shows the confidence in the deliverables, the performance on the approach, the genuine approach that we are making.
What you have agreed to is that if our GDP aligns with the baseline of the IMF's debt sustainability analysis, creditors will accept the haircut. However, if GDP reaches $94 billion, the haircut will be reduced. Not only that, but our interest rate will also increase by 2.5% from 2028 to 2038. I would like to propose a motion to this parliament and request a debate on the matter.
A proposal to add a state contingent instrument to the 2,667,512,169,237 rupee treasury bond already exchanged between the government of Sri Lanka and the Employees Provident Fund in or around September 2023 via the domestic debt optimization program.
During the local debt restructuring, the burden was entirely placed on the public. You have agreed to reduce the haircut for creditors if the country's GDP grows beyond expected levels. In that case, a similar proposal must be introduced for EPF holders.
Triforce's personnel assigned to former presidents and provided security to former presidents will be withdrawn from next week, allowing only police security. Minister of Public Security Ananda Vijaypala told Parliament that police protection provided to each former president will be based on a threat assessment carried out every 6 months.
මේදී පළමුවෙන්ම ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න ඕනේ මේ කිසිසේත්ම හිටපු ජනාධිපතිතුරුන්ගේ ආරක්ෂාව අඩු කිරීමක් නොවන බව.
I must reiterate that this is not a reduction in the security provided to former presidents but a reassigning of security personnel based on the assessment of threats against each former president. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa's security detail comprises 60 police and 228 Triforces personnel. Similarly, former President Maithripala Sirisena has been assigned 4 Triforces and 60 police personnel, while Gotabaya Rajapaksa's security detail comprises 188 Triforces and 22 police personnel. For former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, it is 57 Triforces and 60 police personnel, while Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumaratunga's security detail comprises 60 police personnel, and the security detail of Hema Premadasa, the widow of late former President Ranasinghe Premadasa, comprises 10 police personnel. During the last 11 months alone, the government has spent an enormous amount of public funds to provide security for former presidents. 710 million rupees were spent within 11 and a half months on former President Mahinda Rajapaksa's security. 207 million rupees were spent on former President Maithripala Sirisena's security. A total of 307 million rupees were spent on former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's security detail. Meanwhile, within 3 months, 83 million rupees were spent to fund the security detail of former President Ranil Wickremesinghe. 110 million rupees have been spent in total on former President Chandrika Kumaratunga's security. 32 million rupees has been spent for Hema Premadasa. Therefore, the total expense incurred in this regard during the last 11 months is 1.5 billion rupees. Therefore, from next week, all Triforces personnel will be withdrawn from former President's security details and they will solely comprise of police personnel. Additionally, security details will be assigned to former presidents based on a semi-annual assessment of the threats against them. With this, we can save at least 1.2 billion rupees annually.
මේ සභාවට දන්වනු කැමැති. ගරු කතානායකතුමනි මේ ආයුරින් කටයුතු කළොත් මෙතෙක් වැය වූ මුදලින් දල වශයෙන් රුපියල් මිලියන 1200ක් මුදලක්වත් වාර්ෂිකව අපිට ඉතිරි කරගන්න හැකියාව තිබෙනවා.
Expenditure reports of the 2024 parliamentary election candidates have been made public. According to the Election Commission, expenditure reports of candidates can be accessed on weekdays at respective district secretariats and the Election Commission office in Rajagiriya. Meanwhile, speaking to media, Executive Director of Observer Group Prafril, Rohana Hettiarachchi revealed that over 1,200 candidates had failed to submit their expenditure reports.
The Election Commission announced that election expenditure reports of all candidates, party secretaries, independent group leaders and national list candidates who contested the 2024 general election will be made public from today onwards. As per the regulation of the Election Expenditure Act, the deadline for submitting income and expenditure reports for the 2024 general election concluded on the 6th of December this year. Accordingly, 7,412 candidates from political parties and 434 national list candidates submitted their reports by the deadline. The Commission stated that legal action will be taken against those who fail to make submissions.
දේශපාලන පක්ෂ හරහා තරඟ කරපු අපේක්ෂකව 8361කින් 7412
Out of the total 8,361 candidates who contested the general election representing political parties, only 7,412 have submitted their expenditure reports by the deadline. Out of the 690 candidates who represented independent groups, 493 submitted their reports. 434 nationalist candidates submitted their expenditure reports to the Election Commission. However, 1,259 candidates have not submitted their expenditure reports to the Election Commission. Police assured to take legal action against those who did not turn in their expenditure reports. In addition to that, 3 candidates who contested the presidential election have not submitted their income and expenditure reports. 10 political and independent groups have failed to submit their reports to the Election Commission. Police has taken legal action against 13 individuals, including the 3 presidential candidates. Legal action will also be taken against candidates who exceed the spending limit for campaigning set by the Election Commission.
යම් අපේක්ෂකෙක් ඔහුට හෝ අයට වියදම් කිරීමට හැකි මුදල ඉක්මවා වියදම් කරලා තිබෙනවා නම් එවැනි කාරණා සම්බන්ධයෙන් වෙනම අධිකරණ ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගැනීමේ හැකියාවක් තිබෙනවා.
The appeals court announced that a petition has been filed seeking a writ order disqualifying Jaffna District Independent Parliamentarian Ramanathan Archana from holding a parliamentary seat, and it will be taken up for consideration on the 15th of January. The relevant petition filed by Chairman of Abhinava Nivahal Peramuna, Oshula Herath, was taken up before a two-member appeals court bench comprising Justices Sobhita Rajakaruna and Mahen Gopallava today. The petitioner alleges that MP Ramanathan had submitted his nomination for the 2024 parliamentary election without resigning from his position as a government medical officer, which he cites is a violation of the Elections Act. Thereby, the petitioning party seeks an order declaring that the respondent parliamentarian is not qualified to hold a seat in Parliament under the Constitution and to invalidate his appointment as Member of Parliament. Welcome back to the news. Sri Lanka's economy expanded 5.5% in the third quarter of this year, up from 1.2% in the third quarter of 2023. The three major economic activities, agriculture, industry and services, expanded. Agricultural activities in the third quarter expanded 3% compared to 4.2% in the same quarter of 2023. Agriculture growth was supported by expansion in cereals by 46%, tea grew by 16% and rice by 4.3%. Industry activities expanded 10.8%, of which apparels went up 13.5% and construction 24%. Services expanded 2.6%, of which accommodation, food and beverage servings activities grew 19% and IT-related activities 16%. The Statistics Office said a sharp decline in interest rates was noticed towards the end of the third quarter, easing the domestic credit supply, especially to the private sector, and a significant increase in exports and imports facilitated most economic activities. Now at the Colombo Stock Exchange, shares witnessed a heightened volatility driven by mixed sentiment and increased market activity as selling pressure followed a strong rally the previous day. Amidst increased retail investor participation, the all-share price index closed the day in green at 14,516, gaining 16 points. The most significant contributors towards the positive index were John Keells Holdings, Commercial Bank, National Development Bank, Cargill's and LIOC. Turnover stood at 6.4 billion rupees. The banking sector led turnover by 29% and foreign investors made a net inflow of 336.2 million rupees. The Sri Lankan rupee meanwhile closed weaker against the US dollar, while bond yields were broadly steady. Here's a look at your rupee rates. And that's all from us here tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. I'm Indiva Riyamwan. Good night.